It's the Underpowered Hour on this week's show. Canada gets the Gaia Range Rover SVR. Range Rover releases a London collection of tchotchkes and clothing. Autonomous rovers, GoZilla, and Ike buys another stupid car. And now, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Beres, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at theberescollection.com or follow us on Instagram at theberescollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I'm the removable roof to Steven's unibody. I'm the wildly versatile host of podcasting, Ike Goss. I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, this week in the news, man, there is some eclectic news in the world of Her Majesty's Land Rover. First up, the Gaia Range Rover, which I know we're all a huge fan of this particular Range Rover, which, if memory serves, it celebrates celestial bodies or something, or
yeah, I think you're right. You know, this particular one has a lot of little details. It has a special color. Among them is a bespoke tailpipe.
Oh yes,
it is carbon fiber with bronze accents.
You need that, absolutely. Well, finally, it has made its way to Canada, because if there's one thing that Canadian winters need, it's a bespoke carbon fiber tailpipe with bronze accents. Wonder how that would hold up to road salt.
You know, since it's carbon fiber, I got to think it'd probably do pretty well.
Yeah, actually probably do pretty good.
Bronze, I don't know how that would hold up against the salt of British Columbia, but
yeah. This was finally debuted at Range Rover House up there in Whistler, the ski resort in British Columbia, just outside of Vancouver. Fun little spot if you haven't been up there. The Olympics were there. You know, many celebrities go skiing there. I have relatives that work up there. It's great. It's a great little spot. And what better place to put ye old Range Rover House than up there in British Columbia? And of course, because it's in British Columbia, they chose this is the perfect time to debut the Range Rover London Collection.
The London Collection, yes. That it would be BC Collection or the Canada Collection, but
the Sudbury
the London
collection or something, yeah.
Do you have a sense of what this represents, the London Collection?
I don't know that I know exactly what the point of the London Collection is, only that I'm not 100% sure that JLR is still a car company. It may be sort of transforming itself into a high-end luxury brand. And by that, I mean clothing brand.
It's sort of got a Pottery Barn meets Sharper Image vibe to it.
It does, yeah.
But essentially, it's a group of items that they're selling. There's blankets, there's models of cars, there's sculptures of cars, scarves. There's a $220 travel mug.
Right. Yes, which you do need that. And plus the little sculptures are available in all of the same colors as the cars.
Yes.
And I only have Canadian pricing because this debuted in Canada. I thought that was appropriate. These little cars, which are, did we look? I think 6 inches long, 15 centimeters.
Yeah.
1,050 Canadian dollars.
Because they're 437 US dollars. So they're like making something on the exchange there.
It does seem a little odd. And they are a sort of, I think they're the Range Rover that Jerry McGovern wished he could make if he didn't have to have people like driving them as a car. They're very smooth. They have no discernible, sort of detail or anything. They're very sculptural. And, in my personal opinion, and this does not necessarily reflect the opinion of the Underpowered Hour or Underpowered Hour Inc., but I think the mags look like a butthole. I can't not see it. You look at it and it looks like a cat's butthole.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting choice. They're cool looking. I mean, you get all the paint and everything. It's kind of neat, I guess.
They're machined aluminum, these sculptures, and they come in a presentation box.
Of course.
With an etched card signed by Professor Jerry McGovern, OBE.
Oh, Professor Dr. Monsignor Jerry McGovern, OBE, ABE, OPP.
They seem to have different cards on some of the different models. This particular one says, modernity and dynamism combined with unrivaled proportions and presence to make Range Rover Sport a vehicle of visceral desire. I think I'm sensing a theme. That's a little bit of verbal diarrhea there.
Is that where the professorship comes in, do you think? Do
you think he gave himself professorship?
Yeah.
Is that an honorary title?
Is it an honorary title that he uses as a non-honorary title? I like that. I think, he's also a member of the Nando's Peri Peri Club. I believe he lists that in his signature as well. Huh. And he is a frequent renter at the local Blockbuster. So he's got it all.
There's only one Blockbuster left, and it is in Oregon. And speaking of Oregon, Land Rover is investing $180 million Portland, Oregon tech hub to help them get a leg up on, I'm checking my notes here, autonomous vehicles.
That's right. So Liza and I actually, this reminded me, talked about this when she co-hosted This Was Hot News, and we thought that perhaps the reason for the Oregon investment was its proximity to you and Linus and your propensity for autonomy, generally speaking.
Yeah, so I guess Land Rover has their eyes set on robotic autonomous vehicles at some point in the future. This $180 million investment is payable over 10 years. Sure, we'll get a lot of fancy designer scarves that result in this investment.
But autonomous designer scarves, I think, which is the key piece there. Yeah. I mean, where has Land Rover had experience with autonomous things in the past?
I believe we did a story about their autonomous robotic dog that they implemented at one of their facilities. And I think it's still stuck in a stairwell. So perhaps this investment is specifically to see if they can figure out how to get that dog out of that stairwell. Yeah, it was one of those robotic, like Boston Dynamics style. I don't know if it was a Boston Dynamics dog, but it was one of those dogs, and they did a press sort of demonstration, and I think it fell down some stairs and wouldn't get up or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think they're trying to correct that. So at some point in 10 years from now, they've got another press conference scheduled where they're gonna
Range Rover is gonna fall down some stairs.
Range Rover is gonna fall down some stairs. Well, I'm curious to see how that pans out, but that's close by. Maybe we should arrange a tour.
Oh,
up there
we definitely
at the old
should.
Autonomous Vehicle Hub, JLR Autonomous Vehicle Hub in Portland. We should get a hold of those folks and do a tour. That might be actually kind of cool.
I think that would be amazing. In all seriousness, I would love to see it. I think that we could try to use the word modernity a number of times while we're there. Visceral modernity.
I think there is a design house for JLR in Portland.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Like a sort of like Gaydon, where they have like a design center kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Portland. And they've described this as a tech hub.
Yeah.
A tech hub.
A tech hub. That's how I describe Pangolin 4x4
tech
to
hub.
people, as a tech hub. Yep. A tech hub from the 1950s, but a tech hub nonetheless,
So I also, speaking of interesting collaborations, Defender, the brand, which is part of Land Rover, but a completely separate entity.
A member of the House of Brands, if you will.
Member of the House of Brands.
Yeah, that's right.
They have done a collaboration on Instagram with an artist called GoZilla.
Yes.
GoZilla. And if you check them out on Instagram, check out the Defender brand account on Instagram, you'll see that GoZilla is an artist who kind of does these, I want to say textile sculptures maybe, but I think it might be like digital sculptures. And essentially they look like sort of futuristic or post-apocalyptic, North Face, mannequins. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
They're like sort of characters that are like outdoor clothing on the style. They don't have faces per se. They have like
a sock over their face.
Sock over their face. So this artist is doing a collaboration with Land Rover. So to that end, some of these characters posed around the Defender vehicle as if, I guess, the GoZilla character is driving the Land Rover vehicle on a vacation or something like that. There's some on the roof rack.
On a post-apocalyptic REI vacation, they would be, that maybe has some, I mean, obviously there's a lot of bugs because there's no exposed skin at all, and but Oakley sunglasses and the hat that, like, you know, your embarrassing cousin wears to an outdoor sporting event with a little flappy deal on the back.
Yeah, so it's got, like, the Defender is pictured with a bunch of gear on top. Some of it's, like, vaguely outdoor oriented. There's, like, some sort of board. It's unclear whether it's a snowboard or a sandboard and then there's a long skateboard with wheels and a barrel, maybe of water, and you know, some sort of random stuff. It reminded me of my 70-year-old aunt who is allergic to the sun if she, like, went to a yard sale. You know, that's kind of what it
really, yes, it definitely has, like, strong, you know, like, pack rat hoarder vibes going on up there on the roof. And then a, you know, futuristic desert, you know, ninja looking on in awe with maybe a fishing vest on. It's interesting. I have to say, I'm not exactly sure what, I mean, does this make you want to buy a Defender?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right? I mean, I understand that they're trying to bring Defender into places where you wouldn't normally see it, right? Like, they're trying to expose different types of people who are maybe following different kinds of Instagram accounts.
Yeah, like,
you know,
there's a word for those types of people that don't know any better.
Someone who would never buy a car, I think, is what they would call those people. I do think, though, from now on, I am going to dress as closely to this GoZilla mannequin as I can. I noticed that also, like, the t-shirt has a ton of tiny holes, like, eaten into it by,
it's kind of like the Matrix, you know, where they have a decent sweater, they all have, like, holes and tears and pulls in them.
Yeah, it's impossible. There's no, all the old navies closed decades ago. Yeah,
the future is just bad clothes.
God damn. Close. Yeah, you know, you can't have nice things. You can't have nice things. You know,
hats off to GoZilla and Land Rover, Defender for this collaboration. It's, if nothing else, it's compelling.
That's exactly right.
You look at it and you're like, what's going on there? It definitely warrants a second look.
Oh, for sure. In the show notes there with links to the GoZilla Defender collaboration project. Great. And Ike and I have started work on our tribute photo series to these. So we're
gonna get that sock right over your face.
Gotta get a face size sock, a head size sock going right away on that. So speaking of socks over your head, I hear that you have added a new vehicle to the stable in a segment we're calling Ike Buys Another Stupid Car.
You know, that's true. I have made an agreement to purchase a car. I have not a done deal. Hopefully we don't jinx it. Or maybe hopefully we jinx it.
Hopefully we do, yeah.
But sort of a member of the Mendo Recce email list reached out and said, hey, my neighbor, a couple doors down, has sadly passed away, but inside of his garage is a car you might be interested in. It's an old British car. And I was almost immediately dismissive because if it's one thing I don't need, it's another old British car.
That's right.
But he sent me some photos, and it appears to be quite well preserved Austin Healy 3000 in the garage. And it's been sitting since 1985. And so I don't know anything about these cars, and I have no business owning a Project Austin Healy.
No.
But I kind of think they're cool looking. They're kind of like a fancy MG. You know, they're like a little bit faster, a little bit more performance oriented, a little bit cooler looking than an MG. No offense to MG owners. There's some really neat MGs. But to the Austin Healy, I would describe it as fitting somewhere between an MG and an E-Type. Like the E-Type is like, you know, upmarket, fancier, more powerful, et cetera, et cetera. But the Austin Healy is maybe one of the cooler British roadsters of the 60s.
I agree. So, you know, Chris's dad is a Healy collector as well as minis.
Wow. Yeah. Well, maybe he'd be a good resource because I know nothing about these cars. So if you're listening and you have advice for me that it's too late to follow, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, that's right. This is a great time to say, under no circumstances should you ever buy an Austin Healy 3000, especially if they've been sitting since the 80s.
So I've seen at least 4 pictures of this car.
Great.
And
Seems like you've done all the research. Yeah. And
that's cool. And the owner is the nephew of the fellow that has passed away, the executor. And he doesn't know anything about the car other than he's seen it in the garage since he was a kid. So
wow.
It hasn't moved in a very long time. It looks pretty straight. But there are no pictures of the underside of the car. And I'm assuming, I've made an assumption that the car is from California. It has California plates on it.
Right.
And so I've made an assumption that the car is like relatively solid and dry, but I'm basing that on zero information. So
no actual information.
It's probably been sitting in a tide pool for the last 30 years and then was recently pushed in the garage for sale.
That's right.
So we end up with, this is a little bit of a sight unseen situation. So do you have any words of wisdom for me?
I would, just pour a little ATF in those cylinders, start it, a quick new battery in there, start her up, drive her home. I think it'd be fine. It's going to be great.
Those things, I've been doing a little reading about them. They have kind of a cool engine. It's a 6-cylinder inline. I say it's 2.9 liters, and it makes about 150 horsepower in stock form, and some people are, tuning them up to get 200 horsepower out of them.
Yeah.
So
And I know that's a Jensen-bodied car, right? That the original bodies for those cars are made. They were made for Healy by somebody else, right? Like they were a coach-built sort of.
I don't know
body.
the answer to that.
Yeah,
I don't know the answer
because I think they're kind of like they're like an AC Cobra contemporary, right? They were kind of in the same sort of a thing. Yeah, I think they're super cool. I'm a big fan. What's the color profile of this? Is this like a 2-tone one where it looks like a killer whale, or is it a single color body?
It's sort of I think the color is called ice blue. So it's like a light metallic blue.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So, what color is your E-Type? Isn't it also blue?
Black.
Oh, it's black, right?
It's black. So as soon as I pick that up, I will be the proud owner of 2 very stationary British sports cars.
Non-running. Well, does your E-Type run? It runs.
I have never had it running.
Okay.
It probably would run.
Right.
The engine does not look bad inside. It turns over, but I have never tried to start it.
Right. Well, there we go. Sounds like some great content.
Yeah.
Where we try to start both of these cars.
Sure. Let's start both of the cars, and then let's put them through a gauntlet. Like, let's do a tug of war.
Yeah, and then like some rock crawling.
An off-road. Yeah, the British sports cars. Which British sports car is the best off-road?
Yeah, and then maybe we'll go to Costco and see we could fit the most stuff in. Which one?
We could do a collaboration with GoZilla.
Oh, we could sock our heads and then see if we can drive.
Yeah.
No, I like it. I think it's great. I think GoZilla would really appreciate this Healy. So
it's got to be hot in that GoZilla outfit. You got the sock over your face.
Like, you got the hood thing up around your thing, and then you got a hat
on top of the hood.
Yeah, you got feathers. You're wearing gloves. It looks like you're wearing a t-shirt and a long sleeve shirt and gloves.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's true. It's like somebody who's never been camping before, camping for the first time. It's sort of what it evokes. You don't think?
Every time I've been camping with someone that's never been camping before, there's been a lot of packaging. Like they haven't taken all the things out of the packaging in advance.
Right.
So there's it's just a bunch of boxes and plastic bags and.
Yes, that's right.
That sort of
yeah,
stuff.
you don't have exactly. You don't know to either depackage or simply prep in a way that doesn't require packaging. That's a good point. I would agree.
So speaking of things for sale.
Yes, indeed.
We've got some stuff on the Bring a Trailer that you wanted to talk about.
It's one of our favorite new segments, the What's on Bring a Trailer. And I think to start with the, as I like to, non-Land Rover category, because as you know better than anyone, maybe save Liza, the Suzuki Jimny is one of my favorite cars that I can't have.
Oh, it's amazing.
I'm seriously considering immigrating to Mexico for a whole host of reasons, but namely the fact that I can purchase and legally drive a Jimny until it is stolen from me by a cartel. But it is my favorite little dumb car. And right now on Bring a Trailer is a 1999, which is a pretty good year for them, Suzuki Jimny. They kind of look like tiny little Jeep Cherokees back then. They had like a little bit more of a Jeep Cherokee looking grille. And this one has been raised up in such a way that it looks like a child's like go-karty kind of situation. Like, like when you get the Power Wheels version of a car. And it looks like the car, but the proportions are a bit weird and sort of exaggerated. I feel like that's what this car is, and it looks amazing. Looks super cool. The bidding is open as of now. No one has bid on it. It is in Marina Del Rey, so it's here in California. There's very little stopping me from getting this car at this point, except for divorce and, what have you. But otherwise, really no barrier.
This generation of Jimny, I think it's a little softer than the newest style, a little rounder. It's a little more cartoony, you could picture Totoro driving around in this thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we saw a ton of them when we were in South Africa. This vintage is importable. It's kind of appealing in the one sense, but I feel like when you set it next to the newer generation, and it's like more square and it looks more like the samurai of old, and it's less cartoony and it feels like it has the same or similar footprint but more interior space. I feel like the new one is really much more appealing to me personally.
I agree. I would prefer a new one, but the starving can't be choosy about what they eat. So I feel like if you just have to have a Jimny, this isn't a terrible one. It's got some features I know that you are a big fan of. Both bumpers are rhino lined, which is Linux front and rear, which I know is a prerequisite that you have for most of your vehicles. This is a right-hand drive car because it originated in Japan, which is cool.
Did you notice the angry headlights on it?
I know it has little angry headlights, but it's like mildly upset, because it can't really be angry. It's just too little,
It's grumpy. It's grumpy. If it starts swinging, you just put your hand on its forehead, sort of.
Yeah, it is. It's really cute, and it has the little wing mirror, which is weird because it also has side mirrors.
That's a Japanese domestic market feature
that you can have. So just an extra mirror.
Yeah, a lot of cars have that, and a lot of people that are into the JDM or Japanese domestic market car scene, if they don't have a right-hand drive Japanese domestic market car, they'll often put these mirrors on it as an homage, Japanese design detail. But it is kind of silly. It's reminiscent of the series Land Rover wing mirrors too.
Absolutely, no, that's one of the parts of this car that I like the most is that silly little mirror, which gives you
the automatic transmission.
And the automatic transmission, that's unfortunate. It's too bad that it isn't a manual transmission. You'd think like with this kind of a spec, that's what you'd want. But this car has been lifted a full 4 inches, which
to scale, that's 1.5 feet.
That's 1.5 feet. Yeah. That's exactly right. So it's real tall. It's a tall boy, but worth it, I think, in every way. So
7 days left on this auction and no bids yet.
Absolutely
so
no
bidding
bids.
is open.
Absolutely no bids. Bidding is open. This is a new one, so this has just come out. Worth it, I think, in every way. You're not
worth the opening bid currently.
Worth the opening bid. I'm going to throw one in there just to see. Yeah. Next up in the list, a serious. This is a serious vehicle. Interesting Series 3 Land Rover that is also just opened. The current bid is $109. I think that's appropriate. That feels like a symbolic bid by someone. But $109, given no other bids, this could be yours for $110 maybe.
Possibly. And tell me a little bit about the specifications on
Well, it is
about it.
It's billed as a Series 3 Land Rover. Mm-hmm. Now, it is in that it has a Series 3 grille, hood, and body shell, but that's really where the Series 3 ends. The rest of it, maybe a rear cross member, also from a Series car. The rest of it really is an interesting collection of Defender parts in that it has possibly the bulkhead, but definitely the dash from a Defender. It has the 5-cylinder inline 5 or the TD5 engine. It has coil sprung suspension, and I suspect axles from a Defender, or they've obviously welded on the purchases for a series, but it doesn't look like it because all of the suspension locating and everything is from a Defender. So it really is a Defender with a Series 3 body shell on it, I think. If I were to, or it may have started as a Series 3 and then was like cobbled to the point where now it's almost nearly a Defender.
Yeah, so. I started looking because you got me curious about this, and there are some pictures of the underside, although not many.
No.
And I noticed that it does retain the Series 3 chassis. So it has the leaf spring mounts still on the chassis and coil sprung mounts welded on, and then radius arm mounts and a panhard rod mount and so forth welded to the original Series 3 chassis. So it is definitely a bit of a Frankenstein. And then the inner fenders have been cut away for the shock towers and so forth. But it is a very curious vehicle in that it's a former fire engine.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's had this crazy engine swap conversion done to it. So if you look under, there's a picture of the front axle the camera's facing towards the back of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. You can see that they've spaced out the sway bar mounts and radius arm mounts and panhard rod mounts with 2-inch square tubing welded to the Series 3 chassis.
I see that, yeah.
So it has a pretty significant lift on it in it as well. So, I would be curious to see what the engineering was like on this vehicle, but it looks like it's been together for some time.
Yeah, the handling characteristics on this may be somewhat questionable. Yeah, that square tubing that's quite the job. Now, this was a fire appliance in, also the V-mounted rear shocks. That's an interesting choice in how the rear shock absorbers are mounted inwards to the chassis like a dune buggy. That's kind of interesting. Usually shocks are not necessarily always great. Most of the time they go straight up and down. Oh, it has 2 sets though. If you look, there's a set that goes forward like the normal Defender shocks, although significantly more angular than Defender shocks. And then another set of shocks on the back of the axle that's sort of, and maybe they're using that to locate the rear axle a little bit. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, wait, no. Are those? No, those are the rear, that is the rear axle. Interesting. It's very interesting. It looks like there's like control arms from the front of the car mounted to the back of the car and some other things. So yeah, I don't know what the handling characteristics of this thing would be, especially at any kind of speed, but with a TD5 engine, I mean, you can get a reasonable speed out of it, and it cruises quite well. That's a great engine for sure. It has the engine control module mounted into the glove box, so that if you needed to modify that, it's simply right there where you would keep, Starbucks napkins.
It is a curious vehicle, It's on paper, you've got a classic body style, a turbo diesel engine, 5-speed transmission, some other interesting features, but the devil's in the details, and this probably deserves a little bit more inspection.
Yeah, and it is, it has a Rosenbauer fire engine appliance plate on it, so at some point, and I doubt there's no way that the Rosenbauer guys did all of this chassis and engine and all that sort of stuff. They would have done whatever fire appliance stuff was on it before. At this point, I don't know that there's any actual fire appliance stuff left on this car.
It looks like it comes with the original searchlight in the group of parts and some of the original dash pieces and so forth. But as far as firefighting gear, I think most of that's been removed. Yeah, most of that looks like it's been removed. Oh, and there is the TD5 engine cover. So this is, in fact, a real Land Rover TD5. That's missing from the engine. But yeah, they've got a Nanocom evolution for retuning the TD5 if you need to. That's kind of interesting. It's got a snorkel. It's got some bunch of lights and things. Yeah, it's an interesting car. I feel like this is one where I would love to probably take this for a quick drive. Just make sure. Maybe a little longer than a quick drive. Maybe try to drive it around a corner and see if it'll tip over. If it'll tip over, or simply not turn around the corner. Simply keep going straight. Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah, it doesn't appear. Did you see it? Does it have disc brakes or? Yes. Yeah, so it's been converted to disc brakes. So yeah, who knows? It's got coil sprung axles. So yeah, right. So it'd be easy. But maybe it's a good car. Definitely an interesting, Franken Rover. Check it out on the trailer. If you have $110 to spend, you might be the winner.
you may be the winner. Place your bids now. Open 6 days. And then finally, there's a nice 4.6 Defender, a NAS Defender. I don't know if it's engine swapped or been bored out, but that's up there and already bid to $62,000. It is kind of remarkable. I had thought that when we reached the 94 import year and newer, that you would start to see the prices of these NAS Defenders really, really start dropping, because you can get, an equivalent body and, sort of maybe not an equivalent motor, but you can get some good, 300 TDI 110 Defender now in from a variety of left-hand drive countries, which in many ways is superior to the NAS V8. But these cars have still held pretty good. I think you're not seeing them go for $200,000 anymore, but they're certainly still selling, and they're still selling for a reasonable amount of money, certainly far more than they were new, which is kind of interesting. I don't know.
Adjusted for inflation, I don't know. They've definitely held their value reasonably well, and I think there's a limited supply of them, so there's always going to be a market for them. And anybody who grew up in the 90s that liked Land Rovers was would have wanted one of these. So
yeah,
it's neat to see when this one looks like it has most of its original gear.
Yeah, it does. It looks it's in pretty good shape. It's not missing any of the important bits, and it looks clean. It's got that weird tire cover insert, which is a hallmark of the NAS Defender, and some of the cool dash insert things that were unique to that car. The dash insert is turning green, which is a sign of originality, because that whatever that plastic was made out of is the same plastic as they made the Sonar Blue interiors out of, I think, because it quickly turns green. But
it's like those T-shirts from the 90s that change color in the sun.
Exactly. And it looks like this car has been apart and been fully restored at some point. They have pictures with the doors off and all that sort of stuff. So imagine this was a restored 110, which is nice. They're a great car if you've never driven a long wheelbase Land Rover Defender. And only a series car. They are nice. They got lots of great stuff going for them. But remember that you were only, a few years away from a TD5 Defender, and only a short 10 years away from the real good TDCi Defenders, the pre-2009 TDCi Defenders. So, save up your pennies. And there is a future of fantastic Land Rover Defender long wheelbase cars coming to this country, assuming
heavily tariffed,
assuming that nothing changes with the EPA. However, I think that's only going to get easier, not harder. So, we'll get rid of that. They're going to close the EPA, I think.
Yeah, never heard of that place. On that note, it's been a slice, Steve.
It has been, and so coming up here, we're going to get you and Jenna and Linus and Maddie and maybe Liza and I, and talk all about your wild South African adventures. So look forward to
we're
that in a coming show.
South African guys on the show as well, but
can't wait.
Until that happens, I will see you on the trail.
We'll see you next week. The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Beres, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Beres. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.